Hello, everybody. Welcome to Scale Up. I'm Lorii Abela, your host. I am a serial entrepreneur. I am a matchmaker. I also am a real estate. In real estate, I have Airbnbs, and I also am NLP practitioner, and so the whole shebang. And obviously, we wanna talk to other people who are also in the industry of creating their own success with their dreams. And obviously, there has been a lot of reality coming on, and then we wanna have other people share their expertise from what they have learned through the years. And so, of course, it's not just the success. There's also some challenges along the way. And so our guest tonight is Brooke Vanderbach. She is a realtor for At Properties who works across the board with sellers, buyers, developers, investors, and renters throughout Chicago. And she has closed more than 400 million in deals over the last 18 years. And when she's not working, Brooke loves to travel with her significant other, Joe, or play with her pit bull, Wilbur. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Sure, sure. So, how old is Pitbull now? Wilbur.
Wilbur, we think Wilbur was a rescue, like most of them. And so I think Wilbur's about 8. He likes to sleep a lot.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. All right. He takes care of, the space over
He
there.
manages the household while we're
I know,
gone.
right?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, it's very interesting because, there's a lot of changes now with real estate, and it's not just me who wants to know about it. Obviously, a lot of people who are in different communities, specifically in Chicago, wants to know what's going on. What we don't understand.
Right.
Yeah. So maybe you can explain to us in layman's term the key changes in the real estate
Sure.
regulations and how they impact both sellers and buyers in
Sure.
the real estate market.
So I feel like anytime I ask anyone like what they know about these changes, everyone's like, oh, I've heard a little something, probably on social media. So I think it's very confusing. I think a lot of agents in my industry are still very confused. So the National Association of Realtors settled a class action lawsuit regarding some antitrust claims with respect to commissions. And the settlement that came out of that was essentially that there will be more transparency and that sellers will separately sign an agreement with a listing agent agreeing to pay X commission, and that a buyer will also sign an agreement with their agent and also negotiate how much of a commission they will pay their agent. So before, it used to be the seller would sign a listing agreement, and in there would include compensation for a buyer's agent. That has gone away. A seller can still offer compensation, but they are not automatically doing so upfront. So it's really a separation of sellers and their representation and buyers and their representation, which I think is better for the industry. I think it's going to create a level of professionalism that didn't quite exist, I think, with buyer representation. So any buyer who calls and says, hey, I want to see 123 Apple property, is going to have to sign an agreement with the agent that they're working with before they can see the home. If you want to represent yourself, you can still do that, as you always have been able to. You'll just have to still sign an agreement saying, I don't want any agency representation. So I think buyers right now are a little frozen because they're like, wait, I've never had to sign anything before. Like, why am I having to do this? But it is a national policy. So whether you live here, California, Florida, Utah, it is national.
Oh, okay. So it's the whole of the United States, even
entire
Hawaii and Puerto Rico?
Yes, it's national.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
All right. And so what does that mean? Can the buyer's agent get less than what he's supposed to get? Can he get 1%? Is that?
I mean, everything has always been negotiable. It's just now you, as the buyer, are going to sit down with your agent and have a conversation about their value and what that fee should be. So an agent, you should be interviewing your agent, and that rarely happened in our industry. Like I've had a lot of buyers interview me. We sit down, we have coffee, we go over the process. I've always thought it should be done that way. You should explain to your buyer what your value is, what your experience is, get to know them, their needs, their goals. And now that's really, these changes are putting that policy in place. Like you are going to have very formal conversations with clients. So part of that conversation is going to be, what is the cost to hire you?
So is it usually a percentage now still, or like is it gonna be just a specific amount?
You can negotiate however you want. Our at properties is negotiating a percentage of the sales price. But there will always be other companies and competitors that have different packages. So I think you just have to understand what you're getting for that value. Um, there have always been discount brokerages, right? So there's always been services that you could get at a discounted fee. And those, they got some market share, but they never really got the market share that I think they thought they would, because people value someone's expertise and a high level of service. And with a discount brokerage, you don't get that. Real estate is a complicated animal when you go to buy a place. You have a couple Airbnbs. How many do you have now?
Like I have 6.
6. Do you feel comfortable going out and buying them on your own? Because you've done a lot.
No.
See, she's done 6. Now imagine you are buying your first place. You've never done this before, or you bought a place, but it's been 10 years. Like so many things change. And so you really need that expert to say, here's what's going on in the market. Here's, how we negotiate. Here's what the market value is, and so forth.
Okay. All right. And so when you said like, they can actually negotiate, has there anybody like, asked for like more than like, okay, just one, like maybe a seller's agent, can they ask for like, 10% or not? Just joking.
Boy, I think that would be quite a number. I'm trying to think about how I want to answer this. So, if you're representing a seller, depending on what value you're bringing to the table, and
Okay.
experience is going to depend on what you say your percentages that you're asking for. I think there will always be people that are newer in the industry or work for different companies that will ask for less because they don't yet know their value. They're just getting started. Maybe they don't feel like they have as much to offer to someone. So they're going to offer that opportunity. So there's, it's opening up the door to competition. And so the consumer now, I think, has to be very cautious about not just looking at the number, but also looking at the level of services and experience they're getting, and if that's aligned with their goals.
That's right. Okay. So with the commissions now decoupled, how do you foresee this affecting the negotiation process between the buyers and sellers? Will this lead to more transparency?
Sure. So technically, they have not been decoupled, which means the seller is forced to pay just the listing agent, and the seller cannot pay the buyer's agent. But the Department of Justice is still heavily involved in this case. This case is not completely done. There's lots of appeals going on. So if the Department of Justice had their way today, that would be a done deal. There would be a complete decoupling. They want total separation of, as the saying goes, church and state. So our company at Properties, as of right now, is acting as though the business is going that direction. So we are already structuring our agreements to just be very separate. The seller pays the listing agent. There is a clause in there, if you'd like to offer a buyer's agent commission, you can, but you have zero obligation to. And then we have a separate agreement for the buyers as well. So I think for sellers, there is a slight opportunity, because if you have, it's been a very competitive market. We've had a lot of low inventory. And so as a seller, if you're getting multiple offers, you're going to look at the terms of all the deals. And if a buyer says, okay, I'm definitely going to pay my agent separately and I'm not going to roll it into the total cost of the deal, essentially saving the seller some money, netting them more, that's going to be a value to the seller. So I think it's really just going to be very deal specific. So far, I've seen them included in all the deals, but we're 2 weeks into this. So this is a brand new baby, and we have no idea how it's going to grow up yet.
That's right. Yeah, you'll never know.
Yeah,
Maybe
never
I'm
know.
not sure, like, the election's gonna affect that either.
Right. I mean, we really, there's still, like I said, there's appeals going on and still further investigation. So, it's probably going to take a year or longer until we really have a handle on how the market's truly going to operate with
Yeah,
these changes.
but I like the idea that you're preparing yourself because, like, it's good to educate the buyers and the sellers,
Yeah.
like, where is it going? Because, like, obviously, it will prepare them how it's going to look like, especially now that you're saying it's a seller's market. So how is it going to affect them? Okay, so this is important. What has been the reaction from the real estate agents and brokers to these changes? Are they largely supportive or are there significant concerns?
In general, I don't think anyone likes change. Like, there's always, no one likes change. There's always this very adverse reaction to it. Everyone likes things to stay status quo. People like to be comfortable. But I think in times like this is where you're going to really see the upper 10% of agents who are super successful in this business really exceed, because they are the ones right now that you're hearing from. They're wrapping their arms around this and saying, like, guys, this is the change. This is the new way of doing business. Like, you have to adjust or you fall behind. And I think there's going to be people that have had a couple hard years in this business because it hasn't been easy these last couple of years. And this change is going to force them to say, I've just had enough. I'm leaving the industry. So I think it's going to kind of like weed out the ones that aren't doing a lot of business anymore, and just aren't comfortable with the change.
Okay. Now I wonder, like, has the people who have asked for this change from the Department of Justice have realized, okay, what's the impact of that for those people who are just starting in the industry? I just wonder.
I don't think they thought about that at all. I think there was a big political push to show people that the government is working to try to help create affordability for housing. And I think they thought if they make this change of decoupling, which is what they're pushing for, that will create a bigger open market for negotiation to cost buyers and sellers less. The general consensus in the industry is that that's not probably going to be the case. It could end up costing buyers and sellers more, but time will tell.
Yeah, yeah, it's similar with those service in the restaurants. Like,
Yeah.
they're always like, bugging them, okay, like, this is gonna be the new change. So, like, obviously, like, they're not happy about it because, like, probably they're earning much more. It's the same
Right,
thing.
right. Change invites a whole new culture of business, and I think it'll be great.
All right. That's the positivity about it.
Yeah. What else can you do?
That's
The
right.
world is always changing,
So, could these changes potentially alter market dynamics such as pricing strategies or the speed at which properties are sold? And how might this shift the balance of power between buyers and sellers?
Sure. So I think that when these changes came forth, like we talked about, I think the idea was that, government thought that these regulations would help bring down housing prices. Because if I'm a seller and I'm signing an agreement, for example, for 2.5% commission and not paying a buyer's agent, well, then in theory, I should bring down my price 2.5%, right? But no seller is going to do that. No seller is interested in doing that. They're going to see how much more extra money they can try to get. But so far, we've seen that the net to the seller is still working out the same, because majority of buyer contracts that we've seen still include a buyer's agent commission. So the buyers are saying, okay, I agreed to pay my agent X, but I'm going to loop that into the price, and here's the gross price I'll pay you. So the numbers are still working out as they would before. It's just kind of schematics of paperwork. But like I said, if it's a multiple offer situation, this is where it could favor the seller. And if you're a buyer who's in a weaker position financially than another buyer, this is where you're going to probably have some struggles, or this is where you're going to excel if you're the buyer with more money.
So what are the buyers doing now? Are they postponing buying?
No, I mean, this time of year is always a little bit slower. So the fact that we're seeing these changes just get implemented now, I think is actually a good thing. It's better to implement big change when the season naturally is a bit slower for us, so that we can kind of work through the kinks of it all. But so far, it's just kind of been business as normal, other than schematics of paperwork and making sure buyers understand the change. But we haven't seen a slowdown beyond what we typically see this time of year. The other variable is the election. The election always creates a little, it always makes the market act a little wonky. The stock market's up and down. Interest rates are moving a lot, actually in a positive direction. So I think that's keeping buyers very engaged in the market.
Okay. And so like how long is gonna be like a seller's market? Like, I'm
Oh,
sure a lot of
let me
people
shake
are
my crystal ball.
a
I wish
lot of
I
people
knew.
are waiting.
I know. It's COVID obviously had a really big impact on that, but so did interest rates. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm one of those people, we refinanced during COVID at an under 3% interest rate. A lot of people are sitting out there at that same interest rate. It's very hard to motivate us to move. Do you want to sell at a 3% interest rate to buy a house now that's more expensive at a 7% interest rate? There has to be an external issue that's really pushing you. Marriage, we need more space. Kids, we need more space. We took a better job out of state. We're making a lot more money, or the dreaded divorce. Those are the things that keep us going. So I think as we start to see rates come down, which I think Wells Fargo just put out their 2-year projection for rates, and we should see them move into the 5s within a 2-year period. I think that will encourage a lot of sellers who've been sitting for a while, who'd like to move, to finally move and put their properties on the market, which will help create a little bit more equilibrium in the market.
So do you think like a lot of people have decided, okay, they don't want to stay in Chicago anymore. They want to either go to the suburbs or go to another state, like it's much more cheaper.
During COVID, we had a lot of people go to the suburbs. That's why the suburban markets just went absolutely wild. I don't get a lot of that anymore. I feel that people are committed to staying in the city if they can afford it. A lot of my clients that decide to move to the burbs are because they want to be closer to their family and parents who don't want to live in the city, and they just need help with their children. But they're usually very sad to leave city living. Yeah. But like I said, there was that big panic during COVID and people did flee. But it didn't have that big of a negative. It didn't have a negative impact on Chicago, in my opinion.
Okay, all right. Yeah, this is a notice for the grandparents.
Yeah.
Better beware. Your children are coming.
They are coming. They are coming. Childcare is very expensive and they are free.
That's right. Okay. What advice would you give to buyers and sellers navigating these new regulations, and how can they best protect their interests?
I think the biggest change is going to be for buyers. So for buyers, I would say make sure you're interviewing your agent before you hire them, before you sign an agreement. And if you want, interview several agents. Get referrals from your friends. There's a lot of sites out there where you can click on the property and say, yes, I want to view it at this time. And then a random agent would just meet you there who's not the listing agent. And now they're going to have to ask you to sign an agreement before they can show you that house, but you know nothing about this person or their qualifications. So I think buyers should start baking in some lead time to when they want to start searching in person to make sure they're having those interviews with agents. And then on the flip side, I think sellers need to understand that buyers are going to probably be more qualified now than they were before because they have to sign an agreement. That agent's going to make sure they've been pre-approved. They're not just going to meet some random one-off client there and try to pick them up for business. And so you now just got used as a little bit of a show and tell as a seller. So it's going to add a big level of formality to the process for both parties.
Yeah, so once you have chosen one, are you stuck with that person, or you can
No, you can structure these agreements however you want. Okay. For a new client that might feel hesitant about signing an agreement, I would say, let's do a week. Let's do 2 days. Let's do a weekend, right?
Okay.
Like, I want to make sure I want to work with you too. I mean, there have been clients that I have said, this is not the right fit for us. And so it is a two-way street, more so the direction of the buyers. But give it a weekend, go test the waters, but sit down, meet them at their office or go have coffee with them and really get a feel. I always tell everyone, it's like a short-term marriage. You are telling them a lot of personal information. There's a lot of finances involved. You're spending a lot of time with this person. It's fast and furious, and you want to make sure they are advising you, they know what they're doing, and that you actually can stand to spend time with this person.
Okay. All right.
It's like dating, Lorii.
Yeah, I know. And so what you call it, let me ask you though, like what kind of, for those people who are just starting this, what kind of questions do you think that they should ask their broker?
That's actually that's a great question. I think first would be, what areas do you work? You know, do they align with the areas you're going to be looking in? Because you want to make sure they understand the market dynamics of those neighborhoods. How long have you been in the business? You know, if you have a family friend who just got in the business and you want to give him or her a shot, that's fine. Just because they're new, I'm not saying to discount them, but do they have a support system behind them? Are they part of a team? Do they have a mentor? Do they have people that they can go to that will help advocate behind the scenes for you so that they're guiding you properly? So yeah, again, experience, referrals, like what's their referral base, attorneys, inspectors, lenders, asking them like, how many, do your deals fall apart very often? I think that says a lot about an agent. Are they letting their clients buy good properties? Are they understanding how to negotiate on inspection? And so forth.
Yeah, because you've been 18 years already. Maybe you can give some tips, like, for those people who are just starting. Because like before, once in your life, you were also just starting.
Yeah. So I would say have a mentor, not just, a lot of people just join a team assuming that means they're going to have a mentor. That's not the case. So I made a mistake when I first got in the business and I joined a very small brokerage. And I thought that there would be a really strong mentorship program there because it was a nice small brokerage, and that was not the case. And a agent that I had known very well was leaving one company and going to App Properties, and she knew I was very unhappy where I was at and said, hey, why don't you and I work together and I will mentor you? And that was the best decision I ever made. She was so hands-on with making sure I was really learning the ropes and bringing me along on listing presentations and buyer outings. Like, you cannot learn if you are not in the trenches. And if you are new, how are you going to be in the trenches without a client base? You need someone who already has that business to expose you to it, to get you comfortable. So find a mentor.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think it's also the eagerness to learn. Because it's a lot of, things to learn, and there's always changes.
I've trained a lot of people. I've run a big team. I've mentored a lot of people. And the one thing I always say is you can't be worried about the money. You have to be worried about being great at your craft, because the money will follow you if you are an excellent salesperson and educator. You have to understand the product you're selling, and you have to be able to educate people on that.
Okay. Because I'm sure there are a lot of people who just want to find out, okay, are they fit for this? So do the real estate companies actually give some regular pay on top of the commission?
No, we are fully commission based. So that can be very scary. So if if you have someone at home who can support you, and they understand this could take a year or 2 years before you can become self-supportive again, that's great. If you don't have someone who can support you, I tell everyone you need to have at least 1 to 2 years of living expenses saved. It is hard to get started in this business. I haven't looked at the statistics lately, but I think the average realtor sells like 3 houses. That's not sustainable to survive. So you have to think about that before you get into this business. It's nothing like TV. It is very hard. I always tell everyone, I think it was 7 years in the business before I took my first vacation.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I worked morning, noon, and night. So I think sometimes people see the success of agents who've been in the business for a while and want that, but what they didn't see is the grind that happened before.
Oh. Okay, all right. So you need a daddy. Oh, sugar daddy. I hope not the second
Or mama.
one. That's right. Tell us, like, how can people find you?
Oh, sure. So I'm at Properties. My website is brookvanderbach.com, so you can find me there. My Instagram handle is at brookvanderbach Real Estate, so you can easily find me any one of those places.
Okay, great. So thank you so much for your time again, Brooke. And then, like, for the benefit of those people who are trying to figure out how are things, like, maybe you can have her as your mentor. Go to her.
I'm happy to sit
company.
down and talk to anybody anytime, zero pressure.
And then, like, if you have your own enterprise, and then, like, you're reaching your reality as far as, like, your dreams as having your own business, just give us a holler, because, like, we want to find out how are you managing your business from start to actually, like, meeting your goals. And I'm sure there are a lot of challenges. We want to have you over here because, like, we're here for others to learn about the different things that everybody should know, because it's not just all up. Sometimes there's a down. All right, thank you so much again, Brooke, and then we'll see
Thank
you
you.
again. You take care.
Thank you.